What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MontyVerse. We just got out of the theater seeing Black Adam, the latest film from some version of the DCEU, and Dwayne Johnson's 15-year passion project. Nicki, wow, what a movie, right?
It was definitely a movie.
It is, it's funny because, I don't know about you, but I went into this, like, after the Rotten Tomatoes score came out and after a lot of the first reviews started coming out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into this with a positive attitude. I just want a really fun superhero movie. I want a fun, silly superhero movie with a lot of characters from the comics I love. So that's what I went into this with. What was kind of your perspective going in?
So for me, I really did not like any of the trailers. I thought they were all super dour and honestly just like kind of the antithesis of what you're saying is fun. But then when a lot of the social media reactions came out praising a lot of the action, people having a blast with it, I even saw some people comparing it to Aquaman. I was like, you know, if I can get that, like, I'll probably have a good time with that. So I went with thinking, like, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be great, but it's like, maybe I'll enjoy it.
Yeah, and let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, let's start with the things we liked.
Okay.
The Justice Society. I really loved the Justice Society in this movie. I think that standouts as far as this movie is concerned, they're the standout characters in the movie.
I think they personify the fun that we were talking about and expecting.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to specifically Pierce Brosnan and Aldis Hodge.
Yes.
I think Pierce Brosnan especially was extremely good in this movie, and I think he brought a career's worth of acting talent to this film, and he really elevated the role of Kent Nelson in Dr. Fate, which is a great character from the comics, and we see kind of an amalgamation of different versions of Kent from throughout the different ages of his appearances in the comics, and I really like what they did with Fate here for the most part, and I really enjoyed Pierce's performance. When it came to Hawkman, Aldis is great, as they really stayed true to the character of Hawkman, where Hawkman is just an asshole.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's an asshole, but again, his delivery was just so earnest, and yeah, he's kind of a piece of shit at times, but you understand what he's fighting for, what his end game is a lot of the time. And I think he just did a really fantastic job conveying that. I think he's been a little bit of an under the radar actor. He's been in a lot of other smaller movies, so I'm glad that he's getting a lot more recognition now.
Yeah, and when I say that, first of all, this is a non-spoiler review. We're going to try not to spoil the movie because we want to do a spoiler discussion on this later down the line, because there's a lot actually that I want to talk about in terms of comic and plot and things like that. But what I meant when I said that Hawkman was an asshole is essentially in the comics, Hawkman is a no-nonsense, very conservative. He was Republican. I don't know if they altered that throughout the years. Character who's constantly bickering with his teammates, and that has not changed here, except that he treats his teammates with a lot of respect. I think the bickering is more between him and Adam.
Right. It's like I said, he has the end goal in mind, and by all means, maybe they don't approach things exactly the same way, but clearly his heart is in the right place, at least from what is conveyed to us as the audience.
Quintessa Swindell as Cyclone was great.
She was fun.
I thought that it's an interesting character from the comics to choose a fairly newish character, I'd say, within the past 25 years the character was created, and I think she did a good job with the small. I think out of all the characters, her and when I say her, I mean Cyclone and Atom Smasher had the least amount to do in the movie. Yeah. But I think in that small period of time, Quintessa and Noah Centineo, Netflix's favorite son, Noah Centineo, they did fine. They did really well with what they were given. Yeah,
I love the way that they display her powers. It's a little bit cheesy at times, but I thought it was really fun, and I think it was creative the way they did that, and not necessarily what I would have expected. So I enjoyed her as a character for as little as we got of her.
Yeah, and this is what's so cool about the Justice Society in this movie. The combination of those four characters, those are power sets we're not usually seeing in movies, like the way Hawkman's wings move in combination with his very archaic barbarian fighting style. We have Atom Smasher growing, which we see as in Giant Man, but Cyclone's abilities are something we don't really see that often. Aerokinesis. Oh, yeah. Dr. Fate can do a lot more than what we saw in this movie, but he's basically of a higher level than Doctor Strange. He's essentially a god-tier character if they really wanted him to be. So I think those four powers in combination with each other led to some really cool stuff in the movie. The only problem with the Justice Society is, and this is the one negative I have with them in this movie, as the second they were introduced, I only wanted to spend time with those characters.
Yeah, not to get into other, like, deviate too much away from them, but once they got to their introductions, because there is, like, a section where they, like, are clearly shifting the focus to introduce them from what we were already seeing, that was, like, when I started getting the most invested in the movie itself. And it's kind of, I'm not gonna say it's, like, a work of art, but it was, when they got to, again, I enjoyed it tremendously, the way that they kind of brought everyone in. And, yeah, there was a bit of exposition, but I enjoyed the way they did it.
Yeah, because it's so weird, because the way they're introduced, it's like they're not the hero of the movie or hero of the movie.
Yeah.
And they're not the antagonist.
No.
So they're just side characters, but their introduction is so cool.
Right. Like, and I was actually kind of grappling with that a bit, to where it's like, they clearly are not the leads. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, oh, but like, I still care. I still, like, was invested in them.
This should have been a Justice Society movie. I'm sorry. It should have been. The way they built the world of the Justice Society in this DCU, it doesn't make sense, but now that it's there, I want to live in it, and I want to spend time in it, because there's a history there.
Yes.
And that's not a spoiler, because the Justice Society have existed in this world, and we've gotten that from the trailers, and I want to see what that means. I want to see what that is, and I want to spend more time with these characters. But this is a Black Adam movie, so that ends the portion of things we liked about this film. Not a very good movie, guys. I'm sorry.
No, like, just, like, to put it succinctly, I'm debating if this might be my least favorite DCU movie now, to be quite frank.
Here's the thing. I really didn't want to come in. I didn't want to come into this review in a negative light. That's why I started with the Justice Society, because I really love them in this movie. Mm-hmm. But from an acting standpoint, writing standpoint, sound mixing standpoint, directing standpoint,
special effects,
CGI, I don't think there was one thing in this movie directly related to Teth Adam and The Rock that I could give a compliment to.
I would say, for me personally, and not that I think they did, like, a fantastic job necessarily, I think when you delve a little bit more into his backstory, there's a couple emotional beats that's like, you know what, this makes me a little bit more invested.
But here's the problem. Most of that is handled in exposition.
Right, which, I don't think they do a good job with it.
And they give the exposition scenes to a child actor, who I don't even think is a very good child actor. Nicki says to be gentle, but I don't think he was particularly good. A good actor, and he has most of the exposition in the movie, and it drags the entire film down. Yeah,
like, the comparison I made is he's kind of like another version of Freddie Freeman, in that he's also kind of a nerd, he's awkward, but he's, like, super, like, invested in everything going on.
Yeah, and he's no Jack Dylan Grazer, I'll tell you that right now. But yeah, it's so weird, because the world of Adam in this movie is so just bland and khaki colored and unexciting.
For me personally, it's like, first of all, again, trying not to get into spoilers, like, the immediate thing that crossed my mind when the movie started was, I kind of felt like I was watching 300, and, like, we were getting almost the aspects of the DCU, and specifically the Zack Snyder films in the DCU, that I'm just not the biggest fan of. It's the tone, the way it's shot, like, kind of the bleakness of it, which, again, not that having a dark tone is inherently bad. I just think they went to, like, the extreme with
here's the thing. I wouldn't mind that, because that to an extent is Black Adam in the comics, and that's kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting a more aggressive, serious movie. The problem is, this movie can't figure out its tone.
No! Well, that's the crazy thing, because
you get whiplash.
It's massive whiplash, because, like, everything I just said about being dark and bleak, but then they shoehorn in so many jokes that don't land.
That's separate from the tone. Like, in regards to the tone is just, it goes from that 5-minute, like, Zack Snyder-inspired opening. Then we get this X-Men Days of Future Past Quicksilver sequence, and it comes out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, it's very jarring.
And it's so jarring that I'm literally looking around, I'm wondering if this music is only playing in my head, or if everyone's watching the same movie as me.
And then, like, don't even get us started on the soundtrack and the music.
They try so hard to just force feed you music that doesn't make sense. Like, there's no, like... There's, like music that involves, like Paint It Black is in here. Like, it's just... like they're jukebox cues that don't make sense.
Yeah.
For the movie,
No.
the tone, the character,
Right.
what's going on in the scene.
Right, like a lot of it just doesn't gel, and like you said, it just kind of comes like out of nowhere. Like this isn't a spoiler because it's in the trailer. Like they have that joke where like there's those two people who are rolling up their windows because Black Adam's nearby, and like it's coming off of like a pretty savage scene, and it's like what?
Well, yeah. Since you keep wanting to bring up the jokes, let's talk about the writing. The writing is bad. There's dialogue in here that's terrible. I will say, because I give credit where credit's due. Like a lot of the actors in here were able to elevate some of the material.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Again, Pierce Brosnan, class act.
Yeah.
Aldis Hodge, I think, did a good job. I feel like they kind of gave him the shit end of the stick dialogue wise a lot of times, but I think with what he was given, he did a lot with it.
He did as much as he possibly could. Like it's very clear in those moments that I cringed at that like this is clearly the writing. It has nothing to do with his performance.
Yeah, I think like Noah Centineo was fed a lot of terrible lines, and I think his charisma helped him land a couple of those really bad jokes.
Yeah,
more so. There were oh my gosh, there were jokes in here that fell flat, like bad, like some of the worst forced humor I've ever seen in a movie.
And again, I think I think at least part of why they fail, like, I mean, a bad joke is a bad joke, but it had to do a lot with the mood whiplash. Like, this wasn't a jokey, like, Guardians, like, or the Suicide Squad-esque, like, joke fest or, like, fun tone, like, everyone's so self-aware. Not in the least bit.
No, like, it wanted to be, like, this dark anti-hero movie, but at the same time, it also wanted to be Guardians of the Galaxy. It wanted to be Aquaman.
It wanted to be, in some ways, Shazam.
Yeah. Shazam.
It really did.
Who I guess they just forgot. They reference every superhero in this movie in the DCEU except the one superhero who says the same phrase as Black Adam.
Right.
Shazam is like there are references to the movie Shazam.
Right.
But they don't reference the hero Shazam, which I find hilarious.
And I knew that much of the backstory. I didn't realize how much they were going to actually portray in the movie until we saw it, without ever actually referencing the current Shazam.
Yeah, the writing is just really bad. There are a couple of cool things that I think they try and do, but it's just the execution is so amateurish and terrible.
And the other bit of credit, I think that is the main issue, is like we've said, the writing and the execution. I think the ideas, like there's some semblance of an idea here.
But here's the thing: the movie has a big twist. It's not a twist.
It's not a twist.
They spoiled it in the trailers.
Right. Like,
in the very first scene of the very first trailer.
Yeah, this twist that comes like 3/4 into the movie, I knew what it was, and early on in the movie when they didn't already reference it, I was like, oh, I guess they forgot this part of the movie.
I knew exactly what they were doing right away. I literally wrote in the top of my notes, okay, this is going to be the end of the movie twist. Why did they spoil it in the trailers? I literally wrote that.
And it was so bizarre. I personally don't even understand like why they had to make it a twist to begin with, because again, it was a strange choice. And again, it's like, why did marketing think this was a good idea?
Why did they overcomplicate? Like, this movie was both simple and simplistic and overcomplicated at the same time.
Yeah, like, especially at the beginning, like, I kind of had a hard time following the characters we start out with, and like, what was their end goals? What exactly were they actually trying to do?
But yet their end goals are all pretty simple. But it's such a convoluted way of like explaining it to the audience, and like getting from point A to B.
Right.
It's the most it's just nonsensical. It's so weird because I think this movie's biggest problem is identity. I think it has an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be, so it tries to be everything.
It did. And then the worst part is, like, correct me if I'm wrong, was it maybe the original Suicide Squad where they did reshoots later to make it a little bit more jokey, like to lighten the tone?
Yeah, but I don't even think this is that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like that, or this, all the tonal, like, mismatches, like, it feels like that's what they meant to do, in a way.
I feel like they just wrote this movie scene by scene.
Right.
And they're like, oh, that would be a cool scene. That would be a cool scene.
It was almost like there was no editing involved. There was no reviewing.
I'm sorry. I feel really bad for all the people that worked on this movie. I don't think the editing was particularly good. There were a lot of really bad cuts.
There was a lot of very short cuts for what felt like for no reason to me. Like a lot of scenes, like they wouldn't stay on anyone for more than a second, like while they were talking sometimes. And I'm just like,
the score was good at moments. I really like the Justice Society score. I like Adam's score when it's score and not soundtrack.
I was gonna say the underlying score itself is fine. The soundtrack was very jarring.
Yeah, the sound mixing was some of the worst I've heard in a superhero movie in a very long time.
Yeah, there are times I could not understand what anyone was saying.
There were times where the music was so loud, it was distracting. There were times where the dialogue was so low, it was distracting.
Yeah.
Just really, really poor sound mixing. I don't know what happened here. I mean, I know what happened. The Rock wanted to make a movie, and The Rock is the biggest movie star in the world, so DC needed a hit, and they were like, hey, let's give this guy a movie. And I just don't think he surrounded himself with the right people on this one.
And that's the wildest thing is, like I said before, like it has traces of the things I think went wrong with other movies, while also being very different from all of them at the same time.
And I'm sorry, Dwayne, if this is a passion project, and if you're out there in every one of these interviews saying you like this movie and you're telling the truth, then the more power to you. And I'm sure some people will like this movie. It's just not a good movie.
I was gonna say, and that's the other thing, ultimately, it's like, I can definitely see people enjoying it. I've seen some people are like, hey, turn your brain off, like, and it'll be like a fun popcorn flick. I don't necessarily agree, because I think it's so weak in so many places. Like, I could not even...
I tried really hard to turn my brain off during this movie, and you watched me do it. I turned my brain... Again, I said I went into this trying to be positive. I wanted a fun time in the movie, and I would just go like this. Like, multiple times throughout the movie, just like raise my hands, just like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? What are we doing? This is so cringe. Like, jokes would come and they would fall flat, and the whole theater would, like, it's deflate. Like a theater of only like 12 people, by the way. Everyone felt awkward. It made everyone felt awkward.
There was no, like, and I mean, part of it is because a lot of stuff has been spoiled. Like, I don't think there was any moment where anyone cheered for anything. I don't think I heard anyone laugh at any point.
There were no, like, guests or emotional moments.
There might have been a couple times we chuckled, to be fair.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go that far.
Again, the better actors made the jokes land.
Yeah.
Despite being bad.
Right.
I don't want to say but there's so many jokes per minute in this movie. The good
weird.
Ones are very few and far between.
And that's the other disappointing thing, to where I'm the type of person who loves so bad that they're good movies, and this doesn't. A couple moments, again, when it's very cringe, you could argue that, but for me, it doesn't even go into that territory.
I also don't know what the theme of this movie is. It's the message is so muddied. I think that there's some sort of theme in here about. I couldn't even tell you. They're trying to talk about. Incursions and
being a save,
like the white savior complex, I think, is mentioned at one point. And if they're trying to build to that, and they're trying to say, like, hey man, like, you need the nations, and like they did a very poor job in the execution, because it gets lost. There's no.
Again, I think there's nuggets of ideas in this movie, because without spoiling anything, like, there are people in the movie who do see him as a hero. Yeah. Like they see him being up, who are the people who are the villains to them, and it's understandable. But again, it's just overall portrayed just not strongly enough for me to, like, be able to take that away with any kind of, like, sincerity.
It's hilarious the way they try and pull off a debate between the Hawkman and Black Adam's main conflict throughout this movie is heroes don't kill people. Here, I'm not a hero. I will kill people. Well, I do. I'm gonna kill everyone. And to the point where people are like, his darkness is his greatest heroic feature. And I'm like, they're trying to do heroes. Is it okay to kill someone? Is it not okay to kill someone? And
it's done so badly.
It's done so poorly. It makes me crave the Daredevil Punisher scene from Daredevil season 2, where they have the same exact debate, and it's good, right? Because the writing is good and the acting is good.
And I think that, again, goes back to my point of, like, yeah, they had ideas that I think, if executed better, would have landed perfectly fine, but it's so muddled. And again, I don't know like what to come away with at the very end. Like I might just have to think about it a little bit more, but if the fact that it's taking this long is not a testament.
I will say this though. I will say to I guess round up our review, because if we keep talking about the negatives, we're
also gonna go into spoilers.
Going into spoilers. I will say that while this movie did not leave me craving more Black Adam, it does have me excited for the future of the DCEU. Yeah,
exactly, because we were introduced to a lot of new characters who could very well return. And again, because when they were on screen, and it's like, hey, we could think of like a movie to put them in that we would probably enjoy.
I think that if DC really wants to move forward from this, they need to listen to what we want, and we want more Justice Society. Get those characters back in there. You got great actors playing them already. There's a built-in world, the sandbox that you could play in. Make Adam fight Shazam because it makes sense. Give us the certain characters that come back in this movie. Make them come back in this movie, because I'm way more excited to see them than I am to see continuation of this. But I think there is a path forward from here.
There's a path forward, and again, like, we want to make it clear, we're not anti darker tone movies that are a little bit bleaker. No. We want ones that are just...
I was excited to sit through that with this movie, but this movie tries to be everything, everywhere, all at once. Not the movie.
That would have been fun to watch if they attempted that.
Yeah, but I think it does. It's had this movie. The title for this movie, and all my DC comic fans will understand this reference, should be called Identity Crisis, because that's what this movie is having constantly, an identity crisis.
I agree.
But yeah, I don't want to talk anymore about this. I'm exhausted just talking for what we did. As a DC fan. Listen, if you're a hardcore DC Comics fan like I am, go see this movie. I think there's cool things in it. I think you'll really like the Justice Society. I think you'll like seeing Dr. Fate and Hawkman and Atom Smasher and Cyclone on the big screen for the first time. But if you're not really a DC fan, especially if you're not a comic book fan, don't go see this movie. You won't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's coming from me, who loves comic books and comic book movies.
I think it's totally reasonable. I would agree.
All right, Nicki, where can the people find you?
You can find me at Twitter at EggLordNicki.
All right, and if you guys like the video, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest content, because we have a Black Adam spoiler discussion coming your way, where we kind of break down all the big spoilers from this movie and talk DC Comics and continuity. So, until next time, guys, stay versed.